From being the F3 and F2 champion to not being able to watch this season of Drive to Survive because of embarrassment, Mick Schumacher is having a hard time. For starters, he won't be watching DTS this time. Son of 7-time world champion Michael Schumacher, Mick has revealed that he won't be watching this season of Drive to Survive. And honestly, it makes sense why he won't be able to do that, because it's super understandable that the latest installment of the Netflix series will be particularly difficult for him to watch.
British Grand Prix, and it's lights out and away we go. Sainz gets immediately feeling the need to chop across and maintain the lead down into turn one. Sete camera thinking about the move on Matsushita in the blue car, trying to go around the outside of Schumacher.
He entered Formula One in 2021, and honestly, he wasn't having a bad time. He didn't score any points that year, that's true, but he consistently outpaced his teammate, which proved to the world that the guy is worth his salt. The only issue with him was he didn't have a good car. Many fans of the sport were convinced that if he was in a Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull, or even Alpine, he'd be doing much better than he was. But then the Ukraine war happened. Wait. What does the Ukraine war have to do with Mick's ousting from Haas? Well, okay, here's what happened. Haas was sponsored by a Russian fertilizer company, Uralkali, on the condition that Nikita Mazepin, the son of the owner, would race for Haas. So when the Ukraine war happened, and Uralkali was one of the companies that were sanctioned, Haas had to cut ties with the company and the pay driver. Now here's the thing about Nikita. He was trash, genuinely a horrible driver, so he made Mick look really good. But once he left, Haas got Kevin Magnussen. Now Kevin isn't the greatest driver out there, but he was a lot more experienced than Mick and he was a lot smarter, so he started performing well. And Mick started comparing himself to his teammate. This put a lot of pressure on the young gun, and he started crashing out because he would start pushing himself and the car beyond limits, and that would start creating issues and he would spin out. That cost a whole lot of money to Haas, a team that was already struggling financially. Gene Haas, Haas's founder, was so fed up with Mick that he called him a dead man walking. Gene also said that Schumacher is in over his head because the German ran dead last in qualifying during the race in Baku. During the same race, Mick complained that the brakes were overheating, but Gunther Steiner, the team principal, stated he's going so fucking slow he doesn't need the brakes. Eventually, he was released from the team in favor of Nico Hülkenberg, who's not the best but is more reliable and more experienced. And Mick's exit wasn't easy at all. His exit was covered in painstaking detail during the most recent season of the show, and spending so much time in the spotlight and being used to it should have meant that he could have handled it, right? Well, not really, because everything that happened meant that he really didn't want to see him on the screen anymore. Speaking to Reuters, the 23-year-old said, "I didn't watch it. That's a personal choice. I just don't necessarily feel the need to watch myself on TV, I guess." Because here's the thing, right? Yes, the show had other elements too, and maybe he could have watched those, but considering how 2022 went for him, it was a very sensitive subject for him.
Hey Mick, looked like the pace of the car today looked really challenging. What was it like?
Yeah, tell me about it. It was tough, yeah, especially after that safety car restart, to just see those cars driving by.
Because he constantly failed to impress and finished at a measly 16th place in the standing. But here's the thing, it wasn't always like this. At Silverstone and Austria, Schumacher managed successive 8th and 6th place finishes, and because of that, many people started having faith in him and his Formula One career. Unfortunately though, that success was short-lived, because he couldn't manage a lot after that. However, Schumacher isn't the only person on the grid who's decided that they won't be watching the show. Red Bull star Max Verstappen stated that he doesn't know if he'll be watching the show. He did admit that the show will help improve the sport's global influence. In other words, it'll help with fans in America, where there's going to be a lot of sponsorship money.
Helping push along.
Anyway, back to Mick now. He's moved to Mercedes, one of his father's old teams, as a reserve driver. And the problem is, he might not be getting a ride at all in 2024. He's stated that he's determined and will make the most of a bad situation with a learning face and a smile. Mick even stated that maybe in 10 years, he'll realize that the Haas exit actually worked out well for him, because it did help him grow up as a person, and it did help him gain a bit more experience. So considering just how terrible this year was for the guy, it makes sense that he wouldn't want to watch Drive to Survive this time around. But turns out, there are other reasons why someone in Formula One might want to skip out on the show too. It's riddled with problems. So the Formula One calendar in 2022 had 22 races spread from March to November, right? And the show had 10 episodes, so it made sense that it won't be able to cover all the races.
To support them. Obviously also on track side, be present, have a look at the videos and try and see if there's anything I can spot. And yeah, I think for myself, I'm really here to...
Which is okay, to be honest. But what's not okay is the fact that Netflix showed the British Grand Prix unfold across 3 different episodes from differing team perspectives. Look, I get it. It was a stellar race. It saw Carlos Sainz claim his first F1 victory. And it also had a terrifying crash involving Zhao Guanyu. But like, seeing the race 3 freaking times? Come on. That's a bit of an exaggeration, isn't it? And then the same thing happened with the Miami Grand Prix. Like, I get that Netflix is trying to capture the American market, but the race really wasn't remarkable enough to appear in 4 episodes throughout the entire season. Then there's the issue of the Japanese Grand Prix. So we saw one of the most terrifying moments of the season when Pierre Gasly almost crashed into a tractor. Considering just how bad it was raining, the crash could have been terrible. It was a massive failure on the part of race control, and there was not a single mention of it whatsoever.
It's like, God, what is this tractor? What is this tractor on track?
Then there's the biggest problem of this season of Drive to Survive. It didn't cover the Brazilian Grand Prix. The Brazilian Grand Prix was the most exciting race of the entire season. There were many firsts in it. Kevin Magnussen took pole in a Haas, and Mercedes' George Russell won his first ever race. It also happened to be the first race that Mercedes won throughout the entire season. And while Mercedes drove itself to victory, Ferrari produced another nightmare. Plus, Max Verstappen didn't let Checo pass, even though Checo really needed the points. On top of everything, there was a collision between Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, reminding us of the 2021 season. There was just so much that happened during that race. So much. But we didn't get to see any of it on the show. Lastly, Season 5 focused a bit too much on Daniel Ricciardo. Look, I love the guy, I really do. And sadly, we won't get to see him on the grid this season. But most of the show was all about him. His ousting from McLaren wasn't the only thing that happened. There was so much more that the show just didn't mention. For example, fans hated the fact that Seb's retirement wasn't given any attention. Seb happens to be great friends with Mick Schumacher, so of course, Mick hated that too. And that, folks, are all the reasons why Mick and many others won't watch Season 5 of Drive to Survive.